a misconception with trust is you have to like it. So you don't have to like everything about someone to be in love with them, but you have to trust it.
Hey mate, I'm Coach Mitch and welcome to the Unbreakable Man Podcast. It's my goal to help you achieve excellent results in the area of your health and physical fitness, your career or business, your relationships, and in your own personal passions. This is going to be your one-stop shop if you are the kind of man who wants to achieve his fullest potential in life. And the only way to do that is by becoming unbreakable. Hey guys, Coach Mitch here for the Unbreakable Man Podcast, and today I'm sitting down with my guest, Tyler Erickson. How are you, Tyler?
How you doing?
Good
to
see
be
you,
here.
Really, really good. So, first of all, as our guest today, you're on this podcast. This podcast is all about helping guys become the fittest, strongest, most confident men they can be and overcoming the challenges that a lot of dudes are facing in their lives right now. So it's a fairly serious podcast, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to break the ice and to start this thing off, I wanted to ask you some fun questions. So, man, what is it that you do for fun? What do you do for a laugh, Tyler?
It might sound a bit boring to a few people, but I actually love playing golf, mowing my lawn, and I look out and I watch my grass grow into the patches where the dogs rip it up. I've got 3 dogs that I love.
Cool.
I'm a bit of a homebody, being a business coach and dealing with a lot of people. Actually being by myself and enjoying my own company is where I find the most pleasure. Yeah, and it might look weird from the outside, but just sitting out and watering the grass with a hose is so much satisfaction for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just those moments of peace, eh?
Yeah, enjoy those for sure.
That's good. Yeah, especially in how crazy our lives are today. I was having a similar moment last Sunday. I was just fishing at a lake with my girlfriend and no phones, no cars, just sunset over the water. And I was just like, for 20 seconds, I was like, this is awesome.
This is it.
It's so good.
They're the ones. I do love going for a beer and I have fun doing that. We, hanging out with the guys. I don't mind going for the occasional party, but I do that for fun. Sure. But it's more the moments that I remember are those little ones when it's just us at home. Yeah. Nice.
That's good, man. Awesome. Do you have a favorite sport?
Golf.
Golf is the one, huh?
My dad taught me how to play golf when I was 5 years old, and he passed last year. He was a beautiful man, and I've played golf since I was 5, and I'm 35 this year, so that's 30 years in a sport, and it's just something it's just easy. It's like you're competing against yourself. You're out in nature. There's no rush. If you have a shit game, you can laugh about it. It's just
Can you laugh about a shit game? Can you laugh about a shit game?
There's times where I've wanted to throw clubs through the clubhouse window, but never done it. But yeah, no, I can have a laugh most of the time. There was a period of time when I was 15 to about 22 where I thought I was going to be the best golfer on earth. And I resided to the fact that, of course, I can't get under a handicap of 11. It's never going to happen. But yeah, kind of can laugh.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
No, my roommates play golf. And they're never going to convince me to play golf. I'm more of a motorcycle, fast cars kind of guy.
One day.
And
it'll happen.
And they think, oh no, you'll put golf clubs in the back of that car. I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna. I don't think I will. It's too boring. It's too frustrating.
It'll happen one day. If you get hold, I reckon everybody gets hooked once you have a couple of games, because it's such a tough game to play, and it takes such mental capacity and self-mastery that once you play it. And from what I know of you so far, you're a guy who's driven and moving forward. Once you have a couple of games and you recognise that it's a game against yourself and you learn to get your mindset in this state of like, well, if I'm just playing against me, then the only person that needs to get better is me. But built all this self-responsibility. I guess that's why I love it so much. It taught me self-responsibility for my actions. Yeah. So if I hit a bad shot, unless because I've played with a few mates who will throw a stick at you or something, but unless someone's done something like that, it's all on me, and it's up for me to practice. It's up for me to get better. And it's up for me to be consistent. And if I don't have those things, then I don't play well. I guess that's what I love so much about it, is just that, yeah, it's just all on me.
Sure.
It makes it easier.
Yeah, I guess. That's cool. And when my friends explain it to me, they say it's like, that one amazing game or even that one amazing hole just makes up for all the crap shots.
Fuck, you can have one shot and you want to come back next week.
That's why I do this.
Yeah, it's like literally one shot and you'll forget that you had 120 on 18 holes and that's just one that was a good one. You're like, oh, well, I'm good enough.
That's the one I'm taking to the bank.
Yeah, that's it. I'll talk about that for the rest of the week.
Nice. That's good, man. Cool. What is your all-time favorite book? It can even just be a fiction book you just like the story of.
It's a big question. You haven't seen our library yet. We've got probably about 3,000 or 4,000 books. All-time favorite book is probably, it's an audio book. You can't, well, you probably could, but I haven't been able to find it in written form. It's an audio book you listen to, and the reason why I love it is because it's so universal, and it's the one book that helped me flick the switch in my mind, turned on self-love, turned on self-responsibility, and it wasn't difficult. And it's a book called The Switch by Craig Beck. It's just called The Switch. It's about 4.5 hours. I reckon I've listened to it 30 times. And it's just a simple book that uses good concepts, and I hear something different every time I learn it. And every time I talk to it, if I have a new client who signs on with the program, especially if I have somebody who comes across me that can't afford to work with me or can't afford coaching, I'm like, this is the book you listen to. I send it to everybody. So that there is my all-time favorite book.
Nice.
I have a list of others, but yeah, that's definitely the one that I reckon is the most instrumental to my life. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there maybe one of the concepts within it that stands out for you?
The biggest one that stands out with me is, and this is not what it's said in the book, but it is, people are doing the best they can with the resources they have, and they just need better resources. And often the way we act is the way that we were taught by our parents or the people that we grew up with.
Of course.
And that's not working now. And the way it explains it is really subtle and simple. I've expanded on that and made coaching programs and packages and all these types of things to help people on a bigger scale. But the way it gets across the message of is like, not everything that you do, you're completely in control of what's happening. And as soon as you're aware that you're not in control, then you get two choices. It's to stay a victim or to move into choice and actually start taking action, put some boundaries in place and move towards how you want to live and break generational patterns, because we're taught by our parents and our peers.
Yeah.
That's it. It's up to us to make a change. Nobody else is going to do it for us.
Yeah, for sure. I think perhaps to some degree, I think I want to disagree with that in the sense that, you know, if it's down to the resources we've got, then does that not mean that people who don't have those good resources have no chance then?
No, not at all. I think once you recognize that you don't have resources, then you've got more opportunity than any man on earth, and you're more powerful than anyone.
What's that?
Because we're human beings and we've got the ability to learn. And for us to be aware of something consciously, and I see what you're saying, I don't think anybody's at a disadvantage because the amount of information that we have available to us. So if you can see that that information is something that you don't have, Audible's $15 a month. The internet's free, YouTube's free. And if you learn how to dissect knowledge properly without listening to rubbish, then you can learn anything you want and you can actually get out there and figure it out. It comes back to the man being responsible. So there has always been times in my life I want to take self-responsibility where I've gone, I don't know enough. And I've gone, well, if I don't know enough, that means that I know that there's something to learn. And if we can teach that to people, then it doesn't matter what resources you got, because you can just go buy them. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And I'm really glad you said that, because to me, it's not so much about the resources you got, it's about your level of resourcefulness at the end of the day, right?
It's a good, really good way to put it. Yeah. What can you achieve? We're wired for it. We're human beings are wired for being resourceful. It's why we're a successful species, to the point we're in plague proportion if you looked at it any other way.
Absolutely.
We're so successful at being resourceful that we're a plague. It's interesting. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, cool. Awesome. The Switch, guys, by, what's the name? Craig Beck. Cool.
Yeah. It's worth listening to.
Yeah, wicked. And it's just on audio
Audible,
book.
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Listen to it 3 times.
Awesome.
Listen to it once. Just listening to it, listen to it the second time with notes, and listen to it again, and you'll get a different message every time. Okay. It's worth doing, yeah, for sure.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, it's fantastic. So for the men that are watching this right now, And they're probably all wondering, okay, who is this Tyler Erickson guy? So talk to us, man. What do you do, man? What do you do for a living? How do you contribute?
Okay, I'm going to share the actual mission. So Candace and I grew up in very different homes. I grew up in a beautiful farming property. We had 25 acres. My mother and father were both hardworking, incredible teachers, loving parents. We had everything we wanted, and life was beautiful as a child. It was just genuinely a happy childhood. When I left school, got to school, left school, around that age of becoming a man, becoming a teenager, and I had all these beautiful resources, I was met with just not that. People weren't communicating with each other. I got into a relationship. She didn't know how to talk to me. I was trying to communicate the one my parents which didn't land. My friends didn't know how to communicate. There wasn't deep respect and love for each other. I noticed that people were talking badly behind their backs, and it was just something I didn't grow up in. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it was almost heartbreaking for about 5 to 8 years, where I turned to alcohol and drugs and partying. I was like, well, if I can just have fun, then I can just ignore this bullshit story that's going on, that people don't show love and respect and honest to each other, because I've experienced that. Candace, on the other hand, grew up in both her parents loved her very deeply. Her mother and father, I know them, they're beautiful people. And they didn't have the same opportunity. Things were a bit harder for them. They didn't always have the resources they needed. Quite often they were in poverty because of this is where it comes to the conclusion, is because of the businesses decisions their parents made when they were business owners. My father owned a small business, and he ran it quite successfully, and he used a lot of core principles that he passed on to us as boys. Candace learnt those principles in spite of, I learnt them because of. So we have a mission to impact 100 small to medium-sized businesses to allow them to have the resources in a family unit for children to grow up in a happy and safe environment where they're provided for. So when it comes to people who are doing trauma work, because for the last 8 years I've been running men's groups and seeing a lot of pain and suffering, as well as training a lot of the practitioner coaches on the Gold Coast, working one-on-one with people in helping them through their life coaching them through their beliefs, just completely fucking broken from these family homes where the parents just didn't have enough fucking money. And if I can help 100 businesses a year impact a family of 3 to 5, and then what that carries on, and then they have their own 3 to 5 people in their families, then I believe that more people can have the childhood I have, and no one has to have the childhood that Candace has. So what we do now is we work with business owners to help them know their numbers, have the belief within themselves that they can do it, show them opportunities, possibilities, and really step into this abundance mindset that isn't fucking rah, let's make $1 million in 6 days. It's like, let's create a family unit and let's create legacy for people so they can truly be happy and, leave a beautiful impact in the world.
Nice.
So that's what we do now.
That's great. That's really cool. My, obviously the business I run right now is called Unbreakable Man, but before that it was called Legend Daddy. Yeah. So it was group training for dads.
It's great.
Yeah. And very much the same thing, a lot of these guys they've been in patterns that aren't helping them get where they want to get to, and they've been in those patterns since the earliest days they can remember, right? Because it's all this stuff is generational, passed down from one to the next. Yeah. And what I really love about what I do, especially for the guys who are fathers, is that everything that they learn, all of their own stuff that they address, then ends up being an asset for their child, because they completely changes the way that they talk to their kid, or what they now see as important factors in their child's lives that maybe before they hadn't considered as something that they need to focus on. Right? Yeah. So it does make a big difference, and it's a pretty cool thing to be a part of, isn't it?
It sounds like you've had those moments. Like I've had these a few times, because my mission is to help impact the men. I want them to feel great and responsible and love and have fun and everything. But when you see it passed to a son, and I've seen that in a lot of guys that I've worked with, and you have that moment of, fuck, like that's going to go to their kids and their kids and their kids, and then you can see the legacy of the work that you're doing and whoever taught you and their legacy, and that's impact. That's awesome. Nice. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Good on you, man. So you kind of briefly mentioned about some of your own struggles with alcohol and drugs and partying and all that kind of stuff. And then you also just mentioned about how you've done a lot of work with men's groups over the years. So how did you kind of have to go through your own journey then and maybe work with some men's group yourself before you started kind of giving to those places?
Yeah, 100%. I spent 7.5 to nearly 8 years working underground in coal mining. And that's where the financial abundance started to trigger a change in my mind, because I didn't need anymore. What I wanted was supplied. I could have nice cars. I could buy alcohol whenever I wanted to. There was no restrictions on it. I could buy drugs whenever I wanted to. I could do whatever I wanted. Go to Bali whenever I wanted to. Go travel. I traveled the world for 3 years, and I only worked in bars because I wanted to. I didn't have to. And it sparked something in with me. Is like, this isn't right. Like, there's something that's wrong with me going and spending 12-hour shifts underground, 7 days, coming home, getting on the piss, looking for a wife. There's something that was wrong about the whole situation. And that sparked a journey of a couple of really good friends of mine said, let's come to Thailand for a month. And I started traveling. I spent a month in Thailand, and then I came back. And then from then nothing felt right ever again. I was like, I can't just keep going to work. And I was on a career path to be middle management to upper management. I was going to the top because I'm a natural born leader. I have the ability to lead without making anybody else feel lack, which goes a long way in mining. And then I landed, and I came back, and I lasted about a year before I just bought a one-way ticket to England. I traveled all of Europe, lived in England for 2.5 years, traveled all of Southeast Asia, lived in Cambodia for 6 to 8 months, and walked the Camino de Santiago. And I went on this journey I remember sitting on the plane and just going, and I was sitting in between these two hot girls. I was like 26, and they were prettier than I was living in any of the girls I've seen there. I was having this really cool and fun conversation with them, and I felt that the inhibition or the blanket or the weight was lifted off me because I decided to be free. I've decided to go do something that was just for me, just to make me happy, just to explore the world. And little did I know myself. Like, I was actually exploring myself. And I sat there, and they fell asleep, put their masks on. And I have had a lot of female friends, but it was one of the first conversations I haven't had which I didn't have a sexual agenda for in a fucking long time. So I was looking for a partner at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
I was just having a fun conversation, and I went, I can be anything I want to be. I don't have to be my story. I don't have to be the fact that when I left school, I didn't have the family home I have. I don't have to be what my friends are acting like. I can actually be whatever I want to be. And then I had this world trip, which is just a fucking blast. When it finally, the dust settled, I'll say, I landed back in Australia. I lived back home for 3 months in Dubbo, went back out to the mines, and then a guy asked me to join a men's group. And it was the first time that I was offered outside of, because I still have a lovely connection with my brothers, and I have the connection with my father, even though he's passed, of friendship and camaraderie and community and a brotherhood. And it was the first time I've seen and witnessed it outside of that family unit in the world. And I was like, they asked me to come and check it out. And I was a yes fucking 5 years, 10 years before. Like, I was like, I'm in this. I just want to be a part of something that was like what my childhood is. And that opened me up to this world where all these men are awakening, and they're going, hey, this is not good enough. And then I sat in those circles, and I went through personal development, and I learned about self-love and mastery, and done fucking Reiki courses, and I just done everything, and just went on this journey of self-discovery of what I'd missed out on from, childhood to adulthood in the outside world. And then I started to slowly work my way into being an authority in the space. And then my coaching business took off. People started really respecting my advice. I started running my own circle. And then now I run three men's circles a fortnight, and I don't get financial return for those. because I believe what it did for me, more people want. And then that has perpetuated into guys that the same story I have, different backgrounds with similar to Candace and I, where we came from different areas of going, this is what we fucking want. We want to be in community. We want to be connected. We want to go, like, I know you run retreats and you bring guys together. It's not, and there's this, I get a bit passionate about this. There's this bullshit fucking narrative that men don't share their feelings or they don't want to be vulnerable. And it's a fucking lie. Like, the amount of people that I speak to, men that I speak to, that have been told their whole life that they don't want to be vulnerable. And then you go, hey man, tell me how you're feeling. What's going on? Are you okay? And they just go, thank fuck someone's spoken to me. So that journey for me was, I need to become an authority in this space. I need to get this into businesses. I need to get this into the ideas of men. That's why we run the men's circles. That's why we work so fucking hard at the business coaching. And that's why we work so hard at talking to everybody about what it is that what we do and what we believe is possible for the world. Sorry, I don't know if I went off track. But yeah, I'm passionate about it. And my journey was this, for the fact of, I knew that this was needed. Drugs and alcohol were the distraction, because it feels good. It was fun. Like, I had a good time, and I had fun, and I learned more about what was reality is. And I used to often get, what are you staring at in a pub, or what are you looking at? And I'd actually be looking at someone going, in my head thinking, how can I make friends with that person? And I'd end up in a fight, you know, and you'd end up in a disagreement, or I'd leave because I didn't want to get in a fight, or it'd be something nice. Or sometimes you'd make friends, but I remember just sitting there going, if I'm this introspective, I can't be the only one. And then that's grown me into the career I have now. And that's why we love what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really good that you mentioned there is about I wouldn't say it's completely a myth, but I know exactly what you mean about the narrative that men don't talk about their feelings. As soon as you give a guy an environment, an opportunity to do that, you get so much out of it, and they're more than happy to do it. You know, we do a circle of gratitude at the end of every single training session that we do.
Awesome.
You know, and sometimes they have something really personal to be grateful for, and even just guys having other men say, well done, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen often enough. You know,
it doesn't.
Just that little bit of acknowledgement can change someone's day completely, you know. But sometimes it's not even a gratitude. Sometimes they just had a crap day and they just need to tell you about it, you know, and then at the end of it, we might say, okay, well, that was your day, but what are you grateful for? Out of all of that, what are you taking away from that that's productive and positive, you know? So it's definitely true that you give a guy the chance, and absolutely. They love to do that. Just
create that environment. And it takes time and it takes practice. I don't believe, actually, I'll take that back, just rewind. I was going to say, just for clarity, I don't believe everybody should be just running out and running at men's circle. Although if there's not one in your area, start one. So yes, go out and run them. I do believe that there is a point where you need to pass it over to somebody who's been through the journey. So you're not projecting your own lacks or your own problems on where you should be the one doing the work on yourself rather than doing the work on other people's. There is a point in your journey where you've spent enough money, done enough courses, been around enough groups, made the mistakes in your life. Running a business is the best personal development you can ever have, as you can probably attest to. It fucking brings up everything. Yeah. And then having a partner and then moving through that, and you're in a happy environment where then you become a leader in the space, and I believe you can start giving advice. Previous to me being in those circles for about a year and a half, where I showed up every 2 weeks, plus did my journal every day and read every book and things like that, I wasn't in a place to be helping people. I needed to help myself. So hang out together, start a circle where you group and reflect. If you want to start digging deeper with people, or you're around people that are doing that with you, find a professional, find somebody who's got a run rate or been doing it for a little period of time. Yeah, nice.
And another thing I wanted to say on that same topic, and I'm sure that any guys watching this right now will agree, is that sometimes as men, especially if you're a family guy or you have some leadership position anywhere in your life, sometimes you just can't be vulnerable. Like in that moment, you need to be strong. In that moment, there's a certain experience you need to create for those people who look up to you. And because I know guys in my program who, fathers, leadership position at work, and they can't just break down when they want to, you know? So it's important as men that we have an outlet where we can release some of that stress and pressure so that we can put on that brave face when we need to. And every guy listening to this or watching this right now knows exactly what I mean, is that you need to be able to do that. And part of being able to do that is giving yourself the chance to talk.
You got to create the opportunity for yourself. So the topic for today is, for me, for 4 client sessions now, and now it's coming up, that's alive here, this is really poignant, is as much as we care and love each other, you could fucking die tomorrow. And this is written somewhere. I've read this and I've read it a few times, and it was present in my father's funeral. Within 3 or 4 days, everybody that you know will be back to work. They'll all go home, and no one will stop. They'll stop thinking about you within 6 to 12 months, and they won't give a fuck about your hopes and dreams. They won't care that you didn't share your feelings. You're 100% completely responsible for creating that space that you just talked about. You're responsible for the one to make your life conducive for happiness. People are not going to do it for you. It has to be you. And like, if you're listening to this, find a fucking space. If you're on the Gold Coast, come to my men's groups. And if you don't like mine, I have 5 others that are different. Mine's pretty chill. Some of them are a bit like full on, where you go right into stuff. Ours is just talking. Because I've found that's what works the most, is just talking. Yeah. You know, just everybody has a turn at talking, and then we go around, and if anyone wants a problem solved, we all problem solve it. We do it like a mastermind. But find something. The guys doing the brotherhood, like what your stuff, like just get there, create it for yourself, because no one's going to do it for you. And if you, fucking suicide rates are pretty high, man. If you did suicide, or if you died in a car accident, or you fucked off, you'll be forgotten about in a couple of weeks. It's up to you.
Yeah, well, or you leave a massive scar in
everybody
your kids'
else's
lives.
life. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. I want to rewind quite a bit, because probably the thing that you said earlier that is the most important thing you've said so far, in my opinion, was when you had that moment on the plane where you said, I can be whoever I want to be, or whatever I want to be. Yeah. And I think that that's really what I want the men who listen to this podcast, who watch this podcast, that's what I want for each and every one of them. And obviously myself too. Like, I have a vision for my life, and I get one life, and I want it to be exactly the way I want it to be. Now, obviously, do we have control over everything? No. But I think we have control over a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. And
we definitely have control with how we feel about it.
For sure. Yeah. And I think how you choose to feel about something changes what you do next, and what you do next has an impact on the world around you. Yeah. So what do you think is stopping a lot of men from realizing or internalizing that concept that they can be whatever they want to be?
Boundaries.
What do you mean by that?
So it's a concept that's discussed a lot. I don't know if you've heard it, but it comes up. You got to have better boundaries. It's something that's just delivered in talk therapy from a counselor often. Oh, you've got poor boundaries. So if something in your, let's use a relationship. Guy meets girl, and then they go instantly into, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, and I love everything about them, and like falling in love, you know? Yeah. And all of a sudden, guys' boundaries and girls' boundaries start to get blended, because they had them before. They were just loose or poorly protected, or
maybe even unaware of them.
Unaware of them, yeah. That's exactly right. So they start to blend their boundaries, and then what you begin to believe, used to believe was true, starts to change. And then you start that one person is always going to be more dominant. And then in that relationship, it can often be the female, because women are built to have better boundaries. And then that's why they put walls up in between emotional stuff. And that's a whole nother line. But if you don't have a process for boundaries, and it's a clear process that you know how you're going to operate within your boundaries, and you don't have a consequence for when a boundary is breached without your permission,
you don't have a boundary.
You don't have a boundary. You have an idea, right? Yeah. So I need better boundaries. It's like, well, I'm not going to let, I've done over 4,000 hours of facilitation and one-on-one coaching sessions, and it's growing, because I still do about 10 to 15 one-on-one in group every week.
Yeah.
And I noticed the way in which people were doing boundaries. And so this isn't me going, hey guys, I've got an idea. This is going to change your life. This is my idea and this is what's going to work. Yeah. This is from me observing what was working in people that were happy and observing for what in people that weren't happy.
Yeah. So this is really good because what I would like to know then for all the guys watching, what is an example of a dude in a relationship, let's say, who has forgotten about his boundaries? How does that look for a man? So that anyone watching can go, oh, that's me.
Stops training. If he's been going to the gym to keep himself in shape, stops training. These are the simple things that you can fucking witness really quickly. Yeah. And you'll see it in your friends and you would have witnessed it in yourself if you've been down this track. You start eating out more and you both put on a little bit of weight because you're just spending all the time together, and you start disrespecting your body because often we get in fit, in shape to attract a partner, and you meet the partner and then he goes, oh, okay, so now I don't need to respect myself anymore. That's the key indicator. Start turning up late for work. You start texting when you're earning money, whether it's a job and you fucking love it or hate it. My opinion is if you get paid, you sign a contract, work for what you're paid for. Yeah. You start texting her during the thing, and you're not respecting the fact that that's where your income comes from. And then you start potentially drinking too much, going out.
Stop hanging out with the boys.
Stop hanging out with the boys, definitely. And there's a trade-off in that. Like, it's like, hey, guys, I'm going to go hang out with my partner. And the next day you go hang out with the boys. So it's losing yourself completely in your identity to this relationship. And then when the relationship fails, everybody says, I knew that was coming. No one says it to you while you're doing it because you're falling in love. But you can fall in love in a really fucking healthy way, and it can happen fast. And the way it looks differently is when you meet a girl, and I've seen this in partners, and this works for business opportunities, this works for educational opportunities, this works for books that you're reading, and this actually works across the board everywhere. It's like when you don't know what something is, the first step that you need to take before you let it have an influence on your life or what you're doing, going to the gym, eating well, turning up to work, running your business or drinking, fucking whatever it is get to know what it is. I spoke to a guy a couple of years ago, and 18 months into a relationship, thinking about getting married, started having a conversation about kids. She never wanted to have kids. Destroyed it. 8 months to recovery because he was so in love with her. But one of his number one values was a family, and she was just a flat no. If he would have asked those questions, which were important to him when he was getting to know her, in the getting to know something stage, hey, what's important to you? What do you want a family to look like? These are the questions that you ask in a partner before you go, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, or I want to move in with this person, or this person's time is more valuable than time with my best friend or my parents or my brothers or sisters. Does that make sense? Yeah. So in that getting to know someone stage, it is literally just, you can sleep with them, you can go on dates, but you've got to respect that they don't have an influence on who you are yet. They're not exchanging value with you yet. You're just getting to know them. You can't trust them. How often do you see, and some of you may have experienced this, a guy starts dating a girl, a group of friends know that she'll cheat on him or play up him, and vice versa. This works both ways. Yep. Just it's a man's podcast. Let's do it this way. Yep. And then she cheats on him, and it breaks him, but he didn't do his due diligence in whether she was a good person or not.
Absolutely.
And it completely breaks and shatters his heart when he should have just been getting to know her.
Definitely.
Once you get to know something, is it all right if I run through the process of... Yeah.
Absolutely, man. As long as it's in simple terms so we can all understand.
Once you get to know something, this works for jobs and contracts and businesses and partners and fucking hot dogs and everything.
The thing is, I think that if you have a contract, let's say, or you're about to sign a business deal, you're going to... You'd like to think people are going to look at the fine print, right?
Yeah.
But dudes, especially in relationships, just go, oh, she's pretty. Or she touched my pee-pee, so now we're good, right? It's like, no, guys. That does not mean it's okay. That does not mean it's going to help you or be good for you.
Fuck, let it touch your pee-pee, but just don't let it change your life.
Exactly, correct.
Once you get to know someone, then you have a choice. Is it consistent enough that I can trust it? This is what I've seen in people who have successful boundaries, and it normally maps across into business, training, relationships, everything. Can I trust it? a misconception with trust is you have to like it. So you don't have to like everything about someone to be in love with them, but you have to trust it. So you instantly, if you cross that trust barrier and you don't do that, in that person's unconscious mind that you're connecting with, become untrustworthy because you're no longer consistent. And what do women want the most? They want consistency and inconsistency. So they want you to surprise them and make them feel good, but they always want you to show up the same and not change your mind and keep to your word and all these other things.
Sure.
So by you immediately jumping into the relationship, you actually destroy the foundations and the building of the relationship by not being yourself. And then you go, I feel like I've just been acting for 2 or 3 years and then fucking I've heard it so many times. It's because you tried to impress her by becoming her. She didn't want her. She wanted you.
Absolutely.
So once you trust something, she doesn't have to like everything about you. She doesn't have to like that you play golf with the boys, that you go for beers. She doesn't have to like that you train. 100%. She doesn't have to like what you fucking eat. She has to like what she likes.
It's okay if your woman gets upset with something that you decided to do sometimes, guys. It's okay.
It's actually fine.
It's literally okay.
And surprisingly,
it helps.
It's conducive for a stronger relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he's off playing golf again, or he's off playing footy again, or he's driving, he's working on that fucking car. But she will love that you're consistent because she can trust you. And you get passionate about something that's important to you and you're not becoming her. And even worse, you're not becoming her father, which is a whole nother fucking problem. So if you start acting the way she wants you to act, it's genuinely because she hasn't overcome issues. Once you trust something, you find out all the things you love about each other. If there's not enough, finish the relationship. End it. It'd be the same as if you had a contract for a job. The contract was for 3 months. You were going there. They said you were going to earn $2,000 a week. You've been earning $1,400. The $1,400 is there. The ability to earn the money they said isn't there. Are you going to continue in that job when you can get it somewhere else at 2? No. You're going to finish it. But you're only aware of that if you're focusing on, is this consistent? Can I trust this? Once you move past that stage of trusting something, we'll go back to a relationship. It's okay, cool. She knows that I love this. I know that she loves this. I know that once or twice a week we've got to go for a walk in nature. I'll use Candace as an example. She knows that I like to have a beer at lunch sometimes, and that sometimes I need to get out of the house and play golf. And if I'm binging a series, there's no point talking to me, right? And that only happens once or twice a year. So she trusts that. Okay, cool. I really value this person. And that's the next step in the boundaries. And it's like, this is a key thing. Have to focus on yourself first. Is this valuable for me? Is what I trust about this person valuable enough for who I am, for me to be able to commit to a solid relationship fully? Hey, I want to be with you. I love you. I'd love for us to spend some more time together. Fuck's sakes, go on holidays. You learn more about your relationship traveling than anything else. But is this valuable to me? Yeah. And exactly 100% both ways. I learned this from my parent. Is it valuable to them to the point where they're going to receive valuable from me? If the answer is no for either of them, then you've got to work on creating that value. And that's the thing with this process, you can create the value. If you do it without the process, you won't create the value. One person will always dominate. If there's value there in a relationship, hey, I really want to see how this works out. We need to spend a lot more time getting to know each other. And then you keep focusing on those 3 pillars. Do I know her well enough? Keep asking questions. And that's what most women ask for. And men want to know the same. Do I know enough about her past, her future, her hopes, her dreams, her morals, her values, belief, and even the shit she fucks up? Do I know enough? Do I trust that it's consistent enough? People make mistakes. Don't be an asshole. If someone makes a mistake, talk to them about the mistake. This process of a relationship will allow you to get to know someone at the deepest level that is possible for a human being to know someone, because it's not possible to truly, fully know someone. So once you get into that value exchange and that relationship, that's when you get a beautiful relationship and you get to build something and you get to build a knowing for each other and you get to fall in love with who they are and you get to start going, hey, do you know what? I love this woman so much that I want us to have a date night, and I know I train every night of the week, but I think I could drop Thursdays and have date night. Yeah? And then she starts to have an influence on your decision making. but only when you're sure it's going to be valuable for both of you. Let's drop gym night Thursday and we'll go for a walk, and then we'll go and have dinner together and have some fun, maybe have a couple of cocktails or whatever it is that you do.
Yeah.
I know that I used to always play golf with the boys I'm just using an example, on a Sunday, but I know that she loves nature and I love her, and we're going to spend the rest of our life together. I think I could drop golf every second week and we could go away for the weekend. Yeah. And then you start thinking, I know I love leather furniture, and then it just fucking snowballs. And then you start having an influence on each other. And only when you know each other enough that it's valuable for both of you and you've worked on it. There's another step, which is the self, which is the internal, which is the final boundary. The influence. So I do these in circles when I draw them, and I can show you a model. You can chuck on as a link. But that circle in the middle of self is when you've met and Candace and I are playing with this energy. It's when you're thinking about having children, and it's when you're thinking about spending the rest of your life together, and we're buying farms and we build a business and we work together, and for her to be in that circle of self for me, I've looked at what the influence she's had on me, and it's been positive, and it's helped me grow, and it's made me become a better person. And as soon as that stops, I go out a ring. Cool. What's the influence like? Cool. The influence isn't good. Go out a ring. What's changed? Do I still trust the consistency? And then I go out a ring. Do I know her well enough? Because people change. And that's not about you staying in, I love this woman, she's going to influence me for the rest of our life. It then becomes holistically, you're focusing on all of it, all of the time, to build yourself the solid boundaries to keep yourself in love. You don't stay in love. You keep yourself in love. You choose it every day. That works for relationships. It works for a job. It works for the fucking food you eat. It works for your training. It works for everything. It's just a choice. And if you have those boundaries, from what I've witnessed within myself and within people that I've worked with, and where I've asked questions of people that are successful that I haven't worked with, if you continue to hold them, you can do anything. You can be anyone you want to be, and you can have that feeling of, I can actually be whoever I want to be, because the influence is chosen, not taken or implemented, or someone sneaks around the back door just because she's hot and fucking all of a sudden you've dropped everything that makes you happy and then you're miserable in 2 years. Because I guarantee you, if you do that, you're pretending and she'll fuck off. It's just what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. One kind of final point on that, I think, because I know a lot of men definitely struggle with that. You know, I've got lots of guys who have been in my program or who are currently in my program, you know, and you hear how some of their past relationships have been, or currently relationships, and you just go, man, you know, you are accepting a lot of that stuff in your own life. And I think that one of the reasons why a lot of men don't have boundaries or struggle to implement them is because either, whether it's true or it's just a belief they have, a lot of guys don't have options in their life, in the sense that they're not the kind of, like your example before about the work contract where, you know, you're signed, you're going to get paid $2,000 a week, you're getting paid $1,200 a week. Well, a lot of these dudes don't have the ability to go over there and make $2,000. So they have to accept the $1,200. So one thing that I believe is really necessary for all the guys listening to this, watching this, is you need to be, first and foremost, working on yourself. If this is a new concept for you and you're, you know, 10 years into a marriage or a relationship, it's not going the way you want it to, then the first thing you need to do before even thinking about implementing boundaries, I think, is start to work on yourself so you can become the kind of guy who can set a boundary. 100%.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. When somebody comes in and if I start working with a one-on-one client, the first thing I say is, like, session number 1 is we go through everything. I call it it's the most annoying session. You go through everything that's fucked.
Yeah.
And I figure out what's going on, and everything that's great, what their dreams are, but it's mostly everything that's fucked. Get some realizations, and then I say, take everything that you know and put it out into the unknown. And I believe that's truly what working on yourself is, because that's what I did when I traveled. Everything that I thought life was meant to be, everything that I thought would work, I just put everything out into the unknown, and I just got to know myself. And that self, for a period of time, influenced, none of it existed. I just questioned everything And I didn't make any major decisions about who I was or who I was going to be or who was going to be my fucking role model or, all this kind of stuff. And that happened before I went traveling. That happened when I decided to go traveling. I was like, this isn't working. So I put everything in as like, I don't know. And I believe that explains what you're just saying is like, yes, do some work on yourself and question everything. Just because you've done it your whole life, it doesn't mean it's right.
For sure.
Yeah.
100%. Awesome, man. Well, I think that anyone who's watching and listening to this probably has enough to be thinking about now.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to wrap this up with one question. Who would you say has had the biggest impact on you in your life? Or what, if it's not a person?
That's my father. My mother and father. Yeah. There's always a choke in my throat when he passed away in December. He always told me he was proud of me. Yeah, and I don't believe that people do that enough to each other. I often tell people I'm proud of them for what they've done. Mum was always there for me to fire me up and tell me I'm on the right track, even if I wasn't. She was always there to support me, and I think that level of fire from my mum and support and energy and that level of trust and pride and just self-respect that my father impressed upon me and taught me. Like they spent time with me, taught me that I cannot and will not attribute any of my happiness or growth to anyone else but them and myself.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tyler.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time and your wisdom.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, lads.
Hey mate, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. If you did, it would be absolutely fantastic if you could leave us a 5-star review, because that's going to help us get our message in front of more men who need to hear it. Now, if you have some feedback for me, I'd love to hear that too. Comment down below. And if you just need some mini doses of Unbreakable Man motivation throughout your week, then you can follow us across all social platforms. On Facebook, it's Unbreakable Man Challenge. On Instagram, it's Unbreakable Man_challenge. And on TikTok and YouTube, it's just Unbreakable Man. Your support would be absolutely invaluable. Now, last but not least, do not forget, men aren't born, they're built.